Hey everybody, welcome back. Fallen Angels. I'm here to do another reaction video. I'm here trying something else out, and down below, I hope you guys enjoy that, because if you guys seen any of the other videos before and stuff, you got something else to look at. And let me know if that's a good idea, because I'll do multiple ones instead of just 3 or 4 running over and over. Let me know in the comments below. Here we go, I guess. Let's see how this works out. Remember, like, subscribe, and write the comments below if this is a distraction or if this is, something you think you can get into. I'll put more. Cause my baby daddy beat on for real, beat her ass, then he skied on.
Is actually a remote, transcendent source of all goodness and light, often called the One. But the being that became the creator of the material world, the demiurge, that's a being of darkness, and it's ignorant, has no knowledge of the higher God that's above it. But now fast forward 1,000 years. In medieval Europe, a Christian sect known as the Cathars revived these ideas. In fact, they equated the God of the Old Testament with Satan himself. Not like Satan, literally Satan. So they basically said that Satan created the material world, tricked humanity into worshiping him, wrote most of the Bible through his cronies, and then used religion to control the masses with fear. Because while these heretics were getting burned alive, there was someone else, much later, who looked at the same story and said, you know what? They might have been onto something. And his name was Carl Jung. In Jung's vision, God and Satan aren't two separate beings. Satan is God's dark side, his shadow. He was saying the shadow must be integrated, or it's going to rule from the basement of your...
Peter Thiel, the billionaire who bankrolled J.D. Vance's political career, and whose company Palantir was consolidating all of our personal information into a database for the surveillance state, is being investigated for his financial ties to Jeffrey Epstein. In September, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden published a list including Thiel and the names of over 70 other individuals and entities Congress is investigating for their financial ties to Epstein. He named names, and he put them in a bill he introduced called the Produce Epstein Treasury Records Act. This would require the U.S. Treasury to comply with the Senate Finance Committee's investigation into the money trail left by Epstein that connects the disgraced, deceased sex criminal to his clients and financial backers. But it looks like Thiel might have been aware he was on investigators' radar since at least last fall. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast in August 2024 and got oddly defensive of Epstein when the topic came up.
When you were introduced to him, how was he described to you?
He was described as one of the smartest tax people in the world.
The Senate's investigation started in 2022, and at the heart of it is destroying this myth that Jeffrey Epstein was some sort of tax savant, able to magically bend the tax code to his will and save his billionaire clients. Tax returns that the reason they paid him absurd amounts of money was because Epstein did their taxes. And that's where the investigation can conclusively snare him.
Y'all are so pissed about what Trump's doing, but you're not getting prepared. America and Iran are throwing water balloons at everybody. And what happens when that happens? World War III. Even NATO put out a message and tried to warn us because y'all are so behind. Watch this.
To have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours.
It's no secret to us that the world is going to go to shit eventually. I believe the power grid is going to go out. Food and water is going to be very limited. That's why when stuff like this happens, I take immediate action. I think everybody that cares about their family should get an emergency crank radio. It has the solar power option, you can crank it, and it also runs on batteries. So if anything happens, you can use it whatsoever. It also has the antenna function, and it also has a flashlight on it, right? Light, or you can go SOS if you need it. You have different radio stations. And it also doubled down as a charger. I think having an emergency radio is a must-have in every family home. I left the link to where I got mine down there somewhere if you want to check it out.
If we hear about
I think that emergency radio is a good idea, because hand cranking it gets it to play. It's got, it can charge things, so hand cranking it will help you charge, I guess, a phone or whatever, because we are in some times, man, you never know what will happen. You really don't.
Ancient Greece and ancient Rome, then why do we never hear about ancient Persia? Especially if it existed in the same region and time period as the other two civilizations. And it was larger than Rome, controlled 40% of the world's population, and contributed more to science and mathematics than Rome did, but still gets left out of the history books. Well, there are two major Western biases for why we don't hear about it in American school books much. The first bias is just that ancient Persia is modern-day Iran, while ancient Greece and Rome are romanticized as the founders of democracy, American values, and Western values. And the second bias, which is sort of related, is that we mostly just let the ancient Greeks tell us about what Persia was like. But the ancient Greeks were Persia's rival, so of course the Greeks were going to write about how evil and aggressive the Persians were. And it's why we learn a lot more about Alexander the Great conquering Persia than we do about Persia itself. And it's why the most popular movie ever made about Persia in the West is about 300 ultra-masculine Greeks fighting the entire Persian army. But if you look at non-Greek sources, they talk about Persia a lot more positively, where you could actually see Greece being the bad guy and Persia being the good guy. For example, Persia had very little slaves for the time and actually paid their workers for state projects, whereas almost every single thing in ancient Greece was built using slaves, which really isn't an exaggeration. And it's why famous Greek philosophers such as Aristotle and Plato could afford to just spend all day sitting and thinking in the first place. Not only that, but if you look at the way they treated the ethnic groups they conquered, sure, you could say it wasn't right for either of them to conquer and build an empire in the first place, but this is the ancient world. And compared to other ancient empires, the Persians were remarkably humane and tolerant for the time. And historians again, remarkably progressive for its time, as it let women own property, set up businesses, and serve in leadership roles, where one of the wealthiest merchants in Persia was a woman, while Greek philosophers like Aristotle would write about how women are inferior by nature and lacked the rational capacity to rule. And women weren't considered legal people who could sign any form of contract according to Athenian law. Unfortunately, despite how tolerant Persia was, almost none of it gets talked about, which is why I wanted to make a video on it. And sadly, there could actually be a lot more civilizations like this than we think, which we'll never hear about simply because the victors write to the history books. For example, we hear all about ancient Rome's accomplishments, but we hear much less about the accomplishments from ancient Rome's rival in North Africa, Carthage. And it's because Carthage lost. So the Romans burned almost every single text from Carthage. And almost everything we know about Carthage today comes from Roman writing, which had a lot of propaganda. So the Carthaginian writing on what really happened in their own civilization's history is now lost forever. And Carthage now is simply modern-day Tunisia, where few people today know that it to burn every single positive source about Persia around the world, whereas Carthage wasn't as lucky. See, that's kind of the sad thing about ancient history. If you aren't as massive as Persia, and you're on the losing side, and the victors burn your books so they can rewrite the history books themselves, then a lot of knowledge about your civilization is now lost forever.
History is written by the winners.
What exactly happens with this upcoming storm system is still very much up in the air. I personally think the GFS is out to lunch. There's just too much of a signal here to ignore. I don't know how anybody could miss it at this point. But since there's such a big discrepancy between what all the models are showing, the forecast will undoubtedly change a lot as we go forward. This thing still has the opportunity to turn into an even bigger, more impactful East Coast storm, as all signs are pointing towards a very energetic trough digging down into the US with a negative tilt. The European model is already starting to point this out. If this ends up being the solution, we could be talking about a big nor'easter right after Thanksgiving. And I'm talking about blizzard conditions, bone-chilling wind gusts, and maybe even over a foot of accumulation for places like Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. There's also a chance that this shifts west and affects more of the Appalachian region and brings severe thunderstorms farther south. But no matter what, something is bound to happen with all this energy, and that's why this channel exists. I'm just letting you know it's out there. There will be a storm. There will be frigid air. We just don't know how intense it'll be and who's going to see what just yet. Here's my current take on what we could expect. Of course, as we get closer, we're going to know more about this storm, and I'm going to have more detailed maps maps with blue and red, discerning where the snow is going to happen, where the severe weather might happen, etc., etc. But for now, the orange here means that you could see unsettled weather, and this is Thanksgiving Day. We're talking about a rain shower, gusty winds, some snow, nothing really crazy here, but definitely enough to disrupt some travel plans when you're going around and seeing family. Now, the day after Turkey Day is also a very intensive travel day. For the first time in a couple years, a lot of the big box stores are going to start having Black Friday sales again with no restrictions due to COVID. So I'm sure we're going to have millions of people out scrambling to get the latest deals. And unfortunately, they're going to be dealing with some bad weather while they're at it. This day, I actually think has the chance of being the biggest day. That's why you see that dark orange there, which means very unsettled weather. This is where we're talking about thunderstorms, heavy rain, and possibly even some strong winds, maybe even enough to knock out power in a couple areas. And somewhere on the northern extent of that dark orange region, we could be seeing a full-on snowstorm, or at least the beginning of one. Now, if you don't want to get out in this mess and get trampled in a big Black Friday sale, I've got a solution for you. My website, shopryanhall.com, is going to be having a Black Friday through Cyber Monday sale that you can take advantage of from the couch, at home. You don't even have to get out in the rain. I'm just saying, we've got some cool stuff over there, so you might want to check it out. What the Euro is cooking actually ends up on the menu. Very unsettled weather, very likely across much of the Northeast, but especially in New England. The snow is by several miles inland, closer to the high elevation areas. But like I said earlier, this is to the east forward. Now, if you want it to snow, make sure you find that one day subscribers for and if you don't want it to snow, also slap the like button. The action doesn't need as much as the intent. I can only control the weather for you based on my subscribers. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules. Now, of course, on Sunday and Monday, when we're all going back to try to take advantage of those Monday deals, the weather looks like it's going to be the nicest at all.
The wheel of Samsara is a metaphor for the repeating cycle of birth, death, and rebirth described in Indian religious traditions. It turns because of karma, the moral influence of actions, and because of ignorance and craving, which keep beings attached to impermanent experiences. In Buddhism, this is pictured as the Bhava Chakra, showing 6 realms of existence and the 12 links of dependent origination that explain how suffering arises. The cycle is not a reward or punishment system, but a casual process where intentions and actions shape future experience. Liberation means stepping off the road. Traditions describe this goal in different ways. Buddhism aims for nirvana, extinguishing greed, hatred, and delusion through insight and noble eightfold path. Hindus spirit moksha, realizing the self and freedom from the state of unification of the body and mind through knowledge, devotion, or discipline and practice. Jainism seeks Kabbalah perfect knowledge achieved through strict nonviolence and asceticism. In each case, freedom comes from transforming, understanding, and comments that the causes of rebirth no longer arise. It's been around for a very long time. It's beautiful and it's a great depiction.
New temples are this one may be the biggest in town. This is probably not. This is what it looks like from the top down. We're gonna look at the Shiva temple. Now the layout looks a lot like that thing, and if you don't know what it is the antenna on the cone of a fighter jet. Now, these are smaller cone antennas. If you look at a cross section of the Shiva temple, then you'll notice something very strange. Both the interior chambers and the exterior features share design cues from this modern temple. The design is called the Corbelled Arch, including the Grand Gallery, the Great Pyramid, and a lot of we use that design as a waveguide to focus a specific band of frequency. That is the core function of the design. Borobudur also shares this Corbelled Arch, as well as another feature from these satellite features within the complex. Now, I initially thought those looked like a CPU, but now if you overlay a sine wave from the top of the temple to the bottom of the temple, every harmonic of that sine wave converges at the top of the main chamber, and the amplitude of that sine wave defines the boundary of the last 2 cones in the temple. Now, a phase array is another form of beam focusing. Your cell phone uses something similar. If your main temple is the main frequency, those satellite features will be directing it. Now, that graph is a frequency spectrum of an aligned phase array. That is the circuit diagram for it. Now, if our small modern antennas are allowing us to communicate with the whole planet, what is that communicating with? That stuff keeps me up at night and gets me up in the morning. We need more minds on this.
This guy's very smart. I like watching his stuff.
NASA landed a rover on Mars 199 million miles away. You sure about that? You're sure they didn't just send a crew to Devon Island, Canada, and take some photos and do some editing? Some editing to give it that red planet. Camera, you see something much different. Because here's what NASA shows, and with a short video.
The Hubble Space Telescope just captured this new image of Mars in May 2016 as Earth and Mars approached opposition, when both planets are on the same side of the...
But if you decide...
So a man in North Carolina recorded this. He heard some noise and he's like, what the hell is this thing? Welcome to The Imperfect. My name is Armin. If you're new to the channel, consider dropping that follow, man. I would love to get 100,000 followers. I doubt that'll happen, but let's manifest it. Anyway, if you're new here, do that. I'll follow you back. But this man in North Carolina literally records what he thought was just, something weird going on the water. Upon pulling his camera out so he could zoom in, he saw this thing. What the hell is it? It does look like a hominoid figure, but however, this brings me to the point that last week I released this.
What was that, sir? That's not human! That's not human!
I can't say I actually released it. I shared it with you guys because I stumbled on it just like anybody else. Anyway, my name is Armin. Welcome to The Imperfect. If you like this type of content, consider dropping that follow. I'll follow you back the first chance I get. But I'm actually about to do some really big production videos. So if you're new here, thank you. If you've been rocking with me, thank you. Super, super big love, big thank you. And if I have not followed you back yet, I swear I got you. Just give me a second, let me catch up. If I don't, comment in the little comment section. I'll follow you back then. Nice to have y'all. Thank you for being here.
How do the conventional Egyptologists explain the scoop mark?
Diorite pounders.
Diorite pounders.
And fire setting. So basically they stress the granite with fire. They put a huge fire on and then they cool it with water. It stress the rock and then they use the pounders. Like rounded pounders. And remove those scoops manually.
Diorite's like basalt, so it's hard. It's probably not hard, but it will do the job eventually.
Well, I mean, that sounds... I would love to see somebody try to do that. I would love to see them experiment with it and see how it works.
They did an experiment, actually, with the fire setting. But the numbers... I haven't seen the numbers.
Right.
I really want to see how much wood do you need for this. How much
fire. You're literally... You're cutting out a 1,000-ton obelisk using this method. Seems crazy.
Approximately 1,700 years before the birth of Christ, a clay tablet was compiled which changed the very course of human history. The tablet, which is 11.6 centimeters high and 5 centimeters wide, details an encounter which many have described as ripping the very fabric of reality out from under them. In this document, a man by the name of Nani describes a villain by the name of E.A. Nasir, who sold him very poor quality copper. This is the complaint tablet to E.A. Nasir. It is considered to be the world's oldest customer complaint. In it, it describes E.A. Nasir as selling very poor quality copper and being very rude to all of his customers. Any time that you think that you are truly living in a particularly petty time, just remember that bad Yelp reviews are older than the compilation of the Bible.
ones. In fact, the Aztecan branch seems to have split off relatively late. And this doesn't prove anything, but it definitely suggests that the Proto-Uto-Aztecan homeland was somewhere up north, which in modern day terms would either be like really northern Mexico or more likely the American Southwest. I like learning about migrations like this because it reminds us that people have been moving around throughout all of human history. And this could allow families to spread out over really long distances.
Intricate and detailed, and those balls, you couldn't pull those balls out, so how did they get them in there? And we're told everything was done by copper and chisel and hammers and
King Solomon was a straight-up genius. Rumor has it that he was actually so smart that even kings, governments, and literally the occult still use his knowledge to this very day. Of course, the question is, what did he even teach? Well, according to Solomon, the very beginning of wisdom itself is this thing called the fear of the Lord. This is never meant to actually being scared of God, but rather having this deep respect and holy reverence for the creator of the universe. We've all heard pride comes before a great fall, but the real question is, why is this even true? This will only make sense with the very first key of wisdom. You absolutely must first fear the Lord. So sit down and be humble. Solomon also warns about receiving advice from a specific group of people. He calls them sinners, but there's a lot more to this. See, a sinner can be rich and powerful, even a solution to all your problems, but their minds are separated from God, blind to the reality of this world. And if the blind lead the blind, then they will both fall into a ditch. And so, wisdom, according to Solomon, is like a woman. She calls out your name, waiting for your response. Only if you ignore her, eventually, she will leave, mocking your downfall, laughing at what you've missed out on. Only a fool builds their house without a solid foundation. So in this way, the beginning of wisdom is the fear.
I've been asked over and over again to do Charlie Kirk's ancestry, and I just want you to know, I know about almost every Kirk in America, and I still haven't figured out which one is Charlie's family, and I find that very weird and interesting.
Did you know that Abe Lincoln once spoke about an ancient race of giants in America? In 1848, he's standing in front of Niagara Falls and he says, "Can you imagine that extinct race of giants that fill the mounds of America?" Once gazed upon these waters and do
message back, who do you want next? And then Jess Staley writes back, Beauty and the Beast. So it's like, the do you think he's talking about? Right? And that's just one example. Like, you could go to Bill Gates, you could go to Bill Clinton, you could go to all these dudes that clearly, like, we know.
Someone mailed her the same tape. This time, the voice was her own, whispering things she had never said. The voice was her own, whispering things she had never said.
This is a panorama of the electric tower from the 1901. Just look at that. This video alone should dispel the narrative. How are you making a roaring waterfall like that for a temporary structure?
I don't agree with that being temporary structures. All the world's fair.
Statue of Liberty could not be put on land according to maritime law. It had to be put in water. So they built harbor of New York and put the Statue of Liberty out there because the law said that they could not put it on land. Why? It's because the statue is called the Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Freedom. We're not free. Liberty is what a sailor gets when you pull in the port. You ask the captain if you can have a little free time, and if he allows you to, most likely he's not, but if he allows you to have some time, then you can get liberty. You don't have freedom. So there's a world of difference between being a free American and having liberty. So that's why you couldn't put the Statue of Liberty on there.
Not the Statue of Freedom, it's a Statue of Liberty, which is only something that's given to you, permitted when they feel like it.
Any government that can give you something and take it away. That's why civil rights, there is no such thing as civil right. That's why you have the American Civil Liberties, not a civil right. Civil comes from government, civility of the government. Well, anytime the government gives you something, the next administration coming in can cancel it. So you don't have any rights. You have a liberty. Hope.
Look at this. What this is. What this hairstyle remind you is?
Archaeologists are scared to death to open the tomb of the first emperor of China. It was accidentally discovered in 1974 when Chinese farmers digging a well dug up a life-size ceramic statue of an ancient warrior. They reportedly started an excavation project that uncovered not dozens, not hundreds, but literal thousands of these figures buried underground. Known as the Terracotta Army, there were more than 8,000 life-size soldiers discovered, each with unique facial features, along with war horses, chariots, generals, musicians, and acrobats. Almost like someone just froze an entire city ready to go to war, some even being equipped with real weapons and armor, all surrounding the mausoleum of ancient China's first recorded emperor, Qin Shi Huang, and are said to be guarding him in the afterlife. Large parts of the mausoleum are excavated, but the central mound where the emperor's body is thought to be remains untouched for a pretty disturbing reason. Initially built around 200 BC, meaning that no one has been inside of it for over 2,000 years. It's thought to have taken over 700,000 workers about 40 years to build this monument and all of its statues, and was surrounded with secrecy for its entire construction period. So much that it's believed the emperor had every worker executed after finishing their work to safeguard its secrets. We wouldn't even know much about it if it wasn't for ancient Chinese historian Shima Qian, who revealed its secrets in his writings. Allegedly, inside the tomb is an exact model of the universe through the eyes of the Chinese emperor, with glimmering pearls on the ceiling as stars, and a replica of the entire Qin kingdom on the floor, surrounded by rivers and oceans made from a very lethal substance. Records claim the entire tomb to be elaborately booby-trapped, designed to end the life of anyone who enters, complete with Indiana Jones-style wire-tripped arrows and crossbows, even rumors of poison gas, and speculation of indoor rivers of tens of thousands of tons of liquid mercury, which is highly toxic to humans, along with mechanisms in place set to make it flow unexpectedly towards any intruders. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with the secrets of immortality and rediscovering the lost knowledge of our past, and is said to have consumed elixirs containing mercury in his quest for eternal life. It clearly didn't work out so well for him, but his tomb may hold the answers we're looking for, as radar scans done around the area revealed a sealed chamber as big as a football field beneath the pyramid-shaped mound of the mausoleum, suspected to be the lost tomb. And core sample studies did in fact reveal high amounts of mercury in the ground around the tomb as well, so the records of our ancient historian may very well be true. For 50 years now, archaeologists have avoided it, and the government restricted further excavation out of fear of damaging the tomb, getting shot in the face with an arrow, or potentially even mercury poisoning, claiming to enforce these restrictions in an effort to preserve the ancient site, but maybe they already took a peek inside and just didn't want anyone to know what they found.
In 2015, an Australian guy took 3 Snapchat videos of his exotic birds and put them on his story. 15 minutes later, his buddy texts him asking, "What was in the window behind you on that last one?" He pulls up the videos, and sure enough, in the last one you can clearly see someone is pressed against the glass. Nothing comes of the Snapchat videos, but a week later he hears banging coming from that same door in his house, and he gets his phone out and he walks over to film it in case there's someone there. There isn't, but he uploads the video to YouTube anyways. The next day, someone sends him an enhanced version of that video where, as he's walking to investigate the noises, someone with a mask on is standing in the corner of his house. He goes to the police, who look at the video and they're like, "Sorry, that is a masked intruder in your home."
Stop what you're doing, because everybody should be talking about what just happened in New York City. This should be breaking news right now, and I don't see any media outlet talking about it. Money manager Howard Rubin, which of course is this guy right here, was detained in New York City in a sex trafficking you-know-what case. I'm gonna help fill you in on the details, because the details are highly fucking disturbing. Howard Rubin and his former personal assistant, it's always a personal assistant. Why is it always like that when it comes to shit like this? Anyway, Rubin is a legend, might I mention. Let me make that very clear. In a 10-count indictment, but participated in sex acts with the women in luxury hotels in New York. He later rented a 2-bedroom penthouse apartment in Manhattan that was converted into a so-called, in quotations, sex dungeon. The equipment, allegedly, might I mention once again, included a device which was used to shock or electrocute women. The room was soundproof, by the way. I just want you to let that sink in real quick, okay, before we go any further, because it gets worse. Honestly, I'm not even entirely sure that I can go into full detail about what happened to these women's bodies, especially out of respect, but prosecutors said that there were at least 10 other people who helped Rubin facilitate his alleged crime.
science immediately changes, which immediately changes the macroeconomic understanding of our knowledge on science, and that there's way more going on than what we've previously understood. So that's the first thing. Let me put it this way, guys. If this was done properly,
heard about this. I didn't see the footage, but I heard about this. One of the guys who lives in the house hears Douglas and upstairs like tussling with each other, right? He goes upstairs. He sees Douglas sawing Hans' head off with a knife. Hans just like looks at him, doesn't even say anything, just looks at him and just keeps going back to sawing his head off.
Did he decapitate, bro?
No.
Oh, so he got like halfway.
He got like halfway there, so and he just runs off.
Oh my
so
god.
That's down
What? Yeah.
Eventually, later on, I had to do it. And the reason why you fell asleep is because Hans originally killed his roommate because he thought he was going to be like the next Adolf.
Yeah.
And then chopped his head off. Now he's going to be in jail for like the next
30 years.
Or something. Yeah.
And when did this happen again?
It happened like 20
Out of nowhere, communication with Rod and Rachel had stopped entirely, and for days no one heard anything from the duo, prompting that same employee they had sent the image to report them as missing on the 10th of February. It was a devastating turn of events, but one that was always a possibility, or whether a wrong turn in the future, anything could have derailed their expedition, as again, this area was notoriously dangerous, with it seeming all but certain that they had fallen victim to the unpredictable fury of Mother Nature, who disbelieved who could be shit, thanks to the discovery of the couple's car. It was found by authorities abandoned by the edge of the Tequila River, and had been emptied of virtually everything inside. However, there was something left behind. As in the trunk, authorities would find a massive pool of blood, one that belonged to Rachel. Just days after filming, Rod and Rachel were making their way towards the Nicolet Forest Resort, growing more and more excited by the discoveries they were making, oblivious to the fact that in the woods around them, they were being watched, hunted even, and not by an animal, but rather by a man. His name.
The Gateway tapes gave me sleep paralysis. A few nights ago, I experienced my first ever episode of sleep paralysis. I do have a feeling it has something to do with my meditations and the Gateway tapes, though. What about it? I personally am the overall sensation was I after I came out of the sleep paralysis, right? And I went to go open my door, but then I finally woke up. I was where I should be in my room, laying in my bed. The door was not shut. So like, you know, in the movies where sometimes you like double wake up, exactly what I paralysis as being a way to do astral projection, I went over to YT, watched his video. What he enlightened us on was that it's a gift that if you can channel it the right way, it will help you astral project out of your body. He's done it several times. You go into it, embrace it, relax, don't struggle. I will be on your bed, brainwashed to have, because potentially the government doesn't want you to know about astral projection and what you're able to do outside of your physical body. And so, yeah, they plant stuff like spirits and demonic forces and all that. What do you think?
Everything from her eyes up is plastic, which is hysterical because obviously she still looks incredible. But most importantly, Sofia Vergara grew up in Colombia during the 70s and 80s, the most violent time of Griselda's reign. She grew up watching what Griselda's business
Ray J is working with the feds right now to drop a major RICO case against Kim Kardashian and her mother Kris Jenner. I'll show you the footage in a second. It was during one of his live streams, but he said that this is going to be worse than what we saw with Diddy. If you don't know who this guy is, he used to be a rapper a while ago. He also had an interesting relationship with Kim herself, so maybe he does know something. And we saw Kanye make a lot of allegations about Kim, but we never really seen anything come to light, so maybe now we will. But check this out.
This federal RICO though, on KK and Chris. Ooh, the federal RICO I'm about to drop. Anybody know Kim and cool with Kim? They need to tell her now. The rain is coming, the feds is coming. Hey, Ray! The feds is coming. It's nothing I can do about it. It's worse than Diddy. It's worse than Diddy. It's worse than Diddy. The feds are coming to investigate. Yeah, because it's like...
Calcium supplements should not be taken. The problem is not calcium supplements. The problem is lack of D3 and lack of K2.
So we shouldn't be taking calcium supplements?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I stop all calcium supplements on all my cardiac patients. And I tell them you should take vitamin D3 so you'll absorb calcium better into your gut. And you take vitamin K2 because vitamin K2 is going to make sure that you don't get the calcium buildup in the wrong places in your vasculature, for example.
Just to give some context to the research, some large observations that suggest that high-dose calcium supplements, which is especially
so they advise high calcium supplements in women to prevent osteoporosis, for example, right? And osteopenia. I live in Florida, and all these young women that come to me in their 30s, they all have osteopenia. And the question is that they got calcium supplements put inside the milk. In the orange juice has calcium in it, and they're taking calcium supplements, and why would they? And they have sunshine, and why would they have osteopenia? And the reason is D3. You need D3 and K2. That's it. It's a hormonal thing. It's not the elemental thing.
Donald J. Trump, my nigga, America. How did you feel when you heard about the med bed? Oh, you son of a bitch! This is how it works. When they say that they're lying, they're telling the truth.
Of problems accruing from long-term use is beginning to grow and is serious. Cancers, dementias. But the other thing is that once you're on it, it's really difficult to come off it. And that's not all. We use far too many antibiotics, and that's becoming a serious health issue now because a number of people dying from antibiotic-resistant infections is beginning to rise dramatically. It's quite frightening.
So are there alternatives on this table that I should also consider as a form of medicine?
Oh yes, and most of the ones I'm going to be talking about have a pretty immediate effect. Now, right of this. Whoa. These things have medicinal properties. So let's start with dark chocolate. In terms of long-term brain health and cardiovascular health, that's one of the best medicines around. Really? Oh yes. The next one is garlic. And in some parts of the world, they use garlic instead of penicillin. In fact, there was an old trick where if you had enough garlic breathed on a petri dish, and you could kill various pathogens just with your breath. Wow. And then there's this to reduce your cholesterol levels. This can really help with your eyesight. This is for your blood flow, gut health, cardiovascular health. Now this is one of the ones to watch in terms of long-term brain health. Rosemary. We actually did a clinical trial on this, and all you need to do is press it and sniff. So you can see why some of this stuff already is powerful. Now we have some more to go through, and this is where it gets interesting. There's a lot of people listening who will want to hear this. Coffee.
Oh God, what do I need to know?
Dude, when I read this comment, all I thought about was, wait a fucking minute. Then I pulled up a side-by-side, and it's all I can see right now. I needed this laugh. That's all I'm saying, is I really needed this laugh. I guess, thank you, kind sir.
You just know we're fucked when the chief of the FBI that Trump just appointed is trying to warn them. Something's gonna happen. And in the same way that Joe Rogan predicted the LA wildflowers before it happened, imagine an disaster like this happening, where they've been trying to warn it for years.
Large blackout affecting the entire, or a large portion of the United States. City counts on to resupply that food aren't coming. Within a week or two, the sewage system starts to overflow and contaminates what remains of the water supply, and people start getting cholera. So societal order starts to break down. There's mass evacuations. The emergency responders have now left their positions, like many did during Katrina, to protect themselves and their own families. The unfortunate news is that the threat of such a blackout is very real.
When the grid does go down, information is going to be the most powerful resource because nobody's going to know what to do, which is why everyone in my family has one of these. How to build your own water filter, how to make your own solar panel system, how to build your own water heater because it's the winter time, preserving fuel, protecting your house against intruders, a survival garden, even how to make toilet paper. We all know that was the first to go during the scamdemic. It's got all types of shit.
There was this guy, this researcher, who was
I'm sure I'll get that book because I think something bad's gonna happen.
Just posts the name of an undercover CIA operative on social media. You're right. Oh.
Upstairs at the we had the first edition copy of the book Lolita, which, as you know, is about a middle-aged man falling in love with a preteen girl. What's crazy is that he wasn't trying to hide it. He showing it off. Like he wasn't ashamed.
Cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on. Kicking big shit with my feet on. I ain't even gotta touch the bitch cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on.
Victims were bludgeoned to death and died from blunt force trauma to the head.
Kicking big shit with my feet on. I ain't even gotta touch the bitch cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on. Kicking big shit with my feet on. I ain't even gotta touch the bitch cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on. Kicking big shit with my feet on. I ain't even gotta touch the bitch cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on. Kicking big shit with my feet on. I ain't even gotta touch the bitch cause her baby daddy beat on, for real, beat her ass, then he skied on.
Or Shasta, they figured the children were possibly still alive, so they needed to find them very quickly.
FK was a straight gangster. You know what his paperweight was on his desk in the Oval Office? It was half a coconut husk, and on that was a distress letter that he carved after PT Boat 109 got rammed in half by a Japanese destroyer. 2 of his men died, and he swam back out and dragged one of his men through the ocean back to a island, holding his uniform in his teeth, broke his back, saving his dude, wrote a distress letter on a coconut, gave it to an indigenous person that lived on this island who delivered it to the U.S. military, and they went and saved him and his...
This man... Now, that's going to be it for now. I hope you enjoyed my videos that I put up here, and I hope you enjoyed the videos I'll put down below. Leave a thumbs up if you did like it. Thank my fiance for letting these go up. She's my manager of this channel. If you guys do enjoy this and it's not a distraction, I'll have this more often, but I'll have different girls non-stop. It'll be different, you know, one after the other. It'll be different. If it's a distraction, just let me know and it'll be gone. It'll be just a few on the video like I normally do. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the reaction. And you'll see me again real soon.
Bring it down,